So sometimes people say that we need to talk about race more. I think we talk about race a lot, but mostly with people that we agree with. So the reason that we're all so racially disconnected is a failure of the imagination. And I'm going to challenge you to broaden your imagination and then to do something about it. The key underlying fact that underlies all of our racial misunderstandings is the persistence of racial inequality in America. Right? This is a chart that shows infant survival rates. The African-American the black infant mortality rate in Ohio is among the worst in the country, 49th out of 50 states. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong chart. This is about household wealth. Or maybe it's about job offers if your name is Jamal as opposed to Kevin. Actually, it could be a lot of things. I think you probably get the point by now. The numbers don't really matter. We all know, we all understand as a foundational fact that racial inequality persists along a number of vectors. And I'm guessing that all that information might have made some of you a little bit uncomfortable. Because the problem with all of that inequality is that we only have two narratives to explain all that inequality to us, right? And our problem is this is where the lack of imagination comes in. We're human beings, we seek meaning. We need to sort of figure out a story that explains all that inequality. And we only have these two stories, and they're really old and they're really tired. The first narrative is the narrative of Malice, or the narrative of racism. And our paradigmatic example of this is Bull Connor, and he is attacking peaceful protesters, right, with fire hoses and dogs. And the problem with this narrative is that most white people don't think of themselves as Bull Connor. They think that this kind of racism is long since past, and for the most part, they're right. The alternative narrative is the narrative of merit. And here the idea is that if we have fair competition on an even playing field, that'll produce winners and losers. And that's what produces racial inequality. Well, there's a clear inference there of black inferiority. And the problem here is that there are plenty of smart, talented black people working really hard, and they're not seeing the same returns. Those black people don't see themselves as lacking merit, and they're right too. So what's important about this is I'm not going to sort of talk about which of these narratives is more accurate factually, right? The way that these narratives function, though, is crucially important, because both of these narratives operate as simultaneously an accusation and a self-serving rationalization. Whenever there's persistent racial inequality as a topic, white people feel accused of being racist, black people feel accused of being inferior. Right? And these narratives, they're so powerful, they're so ubiquitous, that they don't even have to be named. If racial inequality is the topic, we all feel defensive, and we all feel accused. Right? Now, I'm going to talk about some alternative stories, right, that we need in order to get away from this defensiveness. And this, I'm going to move back to that slide. I'm going to talk about telephones. Here's the thing about telephones. They're what economists call a network good. Most goods, the more of them there are, the cheaper they are, right? Diamonds are valuable and dirt is cheap. Right. But a telephone, the value of one telephone is actually not very much. The only value of a telephone is to be able to talk to another telephone, right? And so once you have two telephones, now it's valuable, but it's not that valuable, right? The reason telephones are so valuable now is because you can talk to billions of people with one phone. Well, now here's the quality of a phone that makes it valuable. It's got to have the ability to technologically connect to the network, right? And if you were to invent tomorrow the best, most meritorious communication device ever, better than the telephone, and nobody else had one, it would be worthless. Right? It's only valuable if you convince everybody else to get one. Right? Let me give you another example. This is Microsoft Windows. Did you know that Microsoft Windows still controls 85% of the world's laptop and desktop computers? 85%. Raise your hand if you think that that's because Microsoft Windows is the most meritorious, best operating system ever invented. How does that work, right? Microsoft Windows is a network good. Microsoft Windows works. People buy Microsoft Windows because everybody else has Microsoft Windows. If you're an employer, you have Microsoft Windows so that your employees, they'll come in, they'll already know how to operate it. If you're developing computer applications, you can develop your applications for Windows because everybody has Windows. Well, what if whiteness is like Windows? What if whiteness succeeds because it's the default network standard and everybody has to learn to connect to it? Let me give you another example of a place where people succeed, right, without necessarily having superior merit. This is Coke. Coke still controls 40% of the world's soft drink market. Is that because in 1886 in Atlanta, they invented the best, most meritorious drink ever invented? Right. The reason is that Coke is it. Coke is the real thing. You drink it, and you want to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. Right? That's how brands work, right? Marketing people invent these logos, and you see these logos, and you feel something. Well, maybe whiteness is a brand. Maybe you see whiteness, and you feel wholesomeness and competence and America. Right? Well, now, here's the problem with these examples, right? There are actually brand managers who are sort of designing, right, intentionally, how to make sure that the brand has a certain value. And there's no Bill Gates of whiteness. There's no whiteness council that's managing the image of whiteness, right? So we need to think about examples that don't have to do with business, and we're going to go to the natural world, and I'm going to talk about ants. Ants do this really interesting, complicated thing. They find the shortest distance from the food to the nest. You've seen this, right? And ants don't do that because they're smart, right? Ants do this following really simple rules. Actually, all they have to do is follow 3 simple rules. Right? They leave a trail of pheromone behind them, and they follow the strongest pheromone scent. Wait, that's only 2. The 3rd rule is actually not something that the ants even do. The 3rd rule has to do with the pheromone itself. It decays over time. So what does that mean? If 2 ants leave the nest at the same time, and one of them takes a minute to get to the food, and the other takes 30 seconds, a minute later, right, the scent at the beginning of that first ant's trail is a minute old. The second ant is back. And not only is their trail only 30 seconds old, but there's a second pheromone trail on top of it. It's doubled over. Right? All the ants follow the shortest trail. Now, that's not because ants are smart. That's not because ants have figured this out. There's no genius ant, right, that invented this system, right? They're just following simple rules. Well, what if you're an ant that can't smell that scent? What if you're an ant from a different nest that senses a different pheromone? And what this system looks like to you is a bunch of people getting food, and they're following some invisible scent that you can't follow. And the other ants think, the first ants think, I don't know why this person doesn't just follow the pheromone. Well, maybe being black is like being an ant from a different nest that doesn't smell the same pheromone. Right? Fish! We're going to talk about fish. You ever seen a bait ball of fish, like hundreds of thousands of fish, and they're all moving in this really coordinated, tightly packed way, and they're not bumping into each other, and you think, how did they do that? Birds do this too. They have these things called murmurations of starlings, tens of thousands of birds, right? And if you've ever seen a video, they're flying in these really coherent, discrete movements, right? They're shapes, and the boundaries of them are distinct, right? And they're not running into each other. There is no air traffic controller of birds directing them how to go, and there's no lead, the lead fish that's sending out communication. Okay, everybody to the left. Right. Actually, the computer scientists figured out when they were trying to animate hundreds of Huns in the snowy background in Mulan, right, they figured out that all you need is a few simple rules. If you try to stay close to the other starlings, and you try to maintain about an equal distance between 6 and 8 other starlings. If you do that, you will fly around in a very coordinated group. But if you don't follow those rules, you will mess things up for everybody. So, you can produce patterns of inequality without either superior merit or racist malice. There are more narratives available than just those two. There are a whole lot of narratives. Maybe it's the case that you're simply following the network standard. Maybe it's the case that you have a good brand image. Maybe you're just following simple rules like hiring people who make you socially comfortable or leaving all your money to your children. Innocent rules, nonetheless, they produce patterns of inequality that look as coordinated as a conspiracy or a choir. So what do we do about that? Well, here's the thing. That racial inequality is still an accusation, because it is in fact true that Ohio is 49th out of 50 states in black infant mortality, higher than Alabama, higher than Washington, D.C. And I've just asked you to imagine that the cause of all that inequality is not white racism, and it's not bad black behavior. Well, what does that mean? If you go along with this, I'm asking you what would happen if we all let ourselves off the hook. I'm hoping that what that means is that you would act, not because of your evil racism that caused this, not because it's your fault for having bad behavior. What if we took credit and blame and guilt? What if we took all of that out of it? What would you do? Well, I'm hoping you would act because babies are beautiful and they deserve to live, and it just takes a little imagination. Thank you.